Jake Morrison crawled through the dark tunnel beneath New Chicago with his flashlight cutting through the thick air that smelled of rust and decay. The maintenance tunnels had become his world for the past 5 years since the Zephyrians assigned him to repair duty in the underground systems that kept their massive city running above his head. Every day he fixed pipes and cables while the alien masters lived in comfort on the surface, where humans were not allowed to go without special permits that almost nobody ever received. The Zephyrians had ruled Earth for 200 years now, and Jake had heard the stories from his grandfather about the time before when humans could fly in the sky and travel to other worlds, but those days seemed like fairy tales now. The aliens had destroyed most human technology during the invasion, and banned anyone from building or using advanced machines. They said it was for safety, but Jake knew it was really to keep humans weak and unable to fight back against their rule. His work boots splashed through puddles of water that leaked from old pipes as he made his way toward Section 7, where the power grid needed repairs. The Zephyrian overseers had given him 3 days to fix the problem or face punishment, which usually meant being sent to the labor camps in the desert, where people worked until they died. Jake did not want to end up there, so he moved quickly, through the tunnels, even though his back hurt from crawling for hours. When he reached Section 7, he found something that made him stop and stare. Behind a broken wall panel, there was a hidden room that his flashlight beam revealed to be filled with metal boxes and strange devices that looked nothing like the simple tools humans were allowed to use. Jake looked around to make sure no surveillance. Drones had followed him into the tunnels before he squeezed through the opening and stepped into the secret chamber. The boxes were covered in dust, and some had writing on them in Old English that Jake could barely read. He opened one box and found weapons inside that were sleek and black with blue lights along their sides. They looked advanced beyond anything he had ever seen, and when he picked one up, it felt warm in his hands like it was alive. Another box contained communication devices with screens that showed maps of the world and locations marked with red dots across every continent. Jake realized he was holding technology from before the invasion, when humans had been strong and free. Someone had hidden these weapons and tools down here, hoping that one day they would be found and used to fight back against the aliens. His heart beat fast as he understood what this meant, but he also felt afraid because touching forbidden technology was punishable by death, and the Zephyrians had ways of knowing when humans broke their rules. He heard footsteps echoing through the tunnels and quickly put everything back in the boxes before crawling out of the hidden room. A Zephyrian patrol drone floated toward him with its red scanner light sweeping back and forth looking for anything unusual. Jake pretended to work on the power cables while the drone hovered near his head making electronic sounds as it checked his work permit and scanned his body for anything he might be hiding. After the drone left, Jake finished his repairs and climbed back to the surface through a maintenance hatch that opened into an alley behind a food distribution center. The sun was setting, and humans were walking home from their work assignments with their heads down and shoulders bent from exhaustion. Everyone wore the same gray clothes that the aliens provided, and nobody spoke to each other because conversations were monitored by the flying drones that watched every street. Jake walked to his apartment building, which was a concrete block with small rooms where workers lived 4 people to each space. He shared his room with 3 other men who worked in different parts of the city, and they barely spoke because they were too tired and afraid to make friends. The Zephyrians had learned that lonely people were easier to control than people who cared about each other. That night, Jake lay on his thin mattress staring at the ceiling and thinking about the weapons hidden in the tunnels. He had always accepted that humans would never be free again, but now he wondered if that was really true. The aliens were powerful, but they were not gods, and the technology in those boxes proved that humans had once been just as advanced as their conquerors. He thought about his grandfather, who had died 2 years ago, but not before telling Jake stories about the war and how brave humans had fought even when they knew they would lose. His grandfather had always said that one day someone would find a way to break the chains that held humanity prisoner, and that person would need to be willing to risk everything for the chance to set everyone free. Jake closed his eyes and made a decision that would change his life and the fate of every human on Earth. Jake waited 3 days before he went back to the hidden room because he needed to be sure no one was watching him. During those days, he thought about Lisa Carter, who worked in the Alien Research Center and had sometimes helped humans when they got sick from the chemicals the Zephyrians used in their experiments. Lisa was smart, and Jake thought she might know what to do with the weapons he had found. The research center was on the other side of the city, so Jake had to get a travel permit, which meant lying to the alien clerks about why he needed to cross districts. He told them he had maintenance work near the science buildings, and they gave him a pass that would let him move around for 1 day only. If he was caught anywhere else, the punishment would be severe. Lisa worked in a laboratory where she studied alien plants and animals that the Zephyrians brought from other worlds. The aliens thought humans were good at taking care of living things, so they used human scientists to do the boring work, while they focused on more important projects. Lisa had learned to speak some of the alien language, and she knew things about their technology that most humans did not. Jake found her during her lunch break sitting alone in a small garden behind the research building. She looked tired and thin like most humans, but her eyes were still bright with intelligence that the aliens had not been able to crush. When Jake sat down next to her, she looked nervous, because unauthorized meetings between humans were forbidden. He told her about the weapons in a whisper so quiet that even the surveillance drones could not hear him. Lisa listened without saying anything, but he could see the excitement growing in her face as she realized what his discovery meant. She had always wondered if somewhere there might be human technology that survived the invasion, and now she knew it was real. Lisa told Jake that she had been secretly studying the alien surveillance systems and had found ways to block their signals for short periods of time. She had never used this knowledge because she was afraid, but now she saw a chance to do something important. If they could create a communication blackout, they might be able to contact other humans who were planning to resist alien rule. That night, Lisa used her access to the research computers to hack into the city surveillance network. She had learned how to do this by watching the aliens work and studying their programming languages when they thought she was not paying attention. Her hands shook as she typed commands that would shut down the monitoring system for 6 hours, which was the longest she thought they could manage without being detected. When the blackout began, Jake was waiting in the tunnels with one of the communication devices from the hidden room. Lisa had shown him how to use it, and they hoped it would work after so many years of being stored underground. The device came alive with blue lights when Jake activated it, and he heard static that slowly cleared into voices speaking in different languages from around the world. Other humans had found similar hidden technology, and they had been waiting for someone to make contact. Jake heard from a man named Commander Kyle Brooks, who led a resistance group in the ruins of old Detroit. Kyle had been a soldier before the invasion, and he had spent 20 years building a network of humans who wanted to fight back against their alien masters. Kyle told Jake that there were resistance cells in every major city, but they had never been able to communicate with each other because the aliens monitored all electronic signals. Now, with the blackout, they could finally share information and plan coordinated attacks. Kyle said they needed to move quickly because opportunities like this were rare and might not come again. During the 6 hours of communication freedom, Jake learned that the hidden weapons existed in many places around the world. The last human defenders had prepared for the possibility that the war might be lost, and they had created secret storage sites, hoping that future generations would find them and continue the fight. Each site contained different types of technology, including weapons that could destroy alien vehicles and communication systems that could reach across continents. Lisa discovered something even more important while studying alien research files. During the blackout, the Zephyrians had been putting chemicals in human food that made people less likely to think about fighting or rebelling. These chemicals also made humans weaker and less intelligent over time, which explained why so many people seem to have given up hope of ever being free again. But Lisa found that the effects could be reversed if humans stopped eating the contaminated food and received treatment with certain frequencies of light and sound. The aliens had the equipment to provide this treatment in their medical centers, but they only used it on themselves. If the resistance could capture some of this equipment, they might be able to restore human strength and intelligence to pre-invasion levels. When the blackout ended, Jake and Lisa had enough information to begin planning the first real rebellion in 2 centuries. They knew where to find weapons, and they knew how to help humans become strong again. Most importantly, they knew they were not alone, because there were thousands of other people around the world who were ready to fight for freedom. Jake returned the communication device to its hiding place and went back to his regular work schedule, so the aliens would not suspect anything had changed. But everything had changed because now he had hope and purpose, and friends who shared his dream of breaking the chains that held humanity prisoner. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and soon it would become a fire that would burn across the entire world. 2 weeks after the first communication blackout, Jake and Lisa had established regular contact with resistance groups on every continent. They used the hidden technology to send coded messages during brief interruptions in the surveillance system that Lisa had learned to create without triggering alien security protocols. Each message brought new hope and revealed that the rebellion was much larger than anyone had imagined. The most important contact came from General Patrick Stone, who led the European resistance from hidden bases in the mountains of what used to be called Switzerland. Patrick had been planning a coordinated uprising for years, but had never been able to synchronize attacks across different regions because of the communication restrictions. Now, with the recovered technology, he could finally put his plans into action. Patrick told them about a man named Danny Walsh, who lived in the ruins of old London and had become expert at manipulating alien computer systems. Danny had discovered that the Zephyrian surveillance network had weak points that could be exploited by someone who understood their programming languages. He had been afraid to use this knowledge alone, but now, with support from other resistance cells, he was ready to take bigger risks. During one of their secret communications, Danny managed to create the longest blackout yet achieved lasting 12 hours and covering most of Europe and North America. This gave the resistance leaders time to hold their first intercontinental meeting since the invasion, where they shared detailed information about alien weaknesses and human resources that could be used in the coming war. Jake learned that there were hidden weapons caches in over 50 locations worldwide, and that some contained technology even more advanced than what he had found. There were plasma rifles that could cut through alien armor and communication devices that could coordinate attacks across vast distances. Most importantly, there were medical scanners that could identify and reverse the genetic modifications the aliens had made to human food supplies. Dr. Nicole Harper, who worked in a medical facility in former Canada, had been secretly studying the effects of alien chemicals on human biology. She discovered that the genetic changes were more extensive than anyone had realized. The aliens had not just made humans less aggressive and intelligent, but had also reduced their physical strength and ability to adapt to new situations. These changes had been passed down through generations, making each new group of humans weaker than the last. But Nicole had also found that all these changes could be reversed using the right treatment. The aliens kept the reversal technology in their communication towers, which were heavily guarded facilities that served as command centers for each region. If the resistance could capture just one tower, they would have access to equipment that could restore human capabilities to pre-invasion levels. The problem was that the towers were protected by automated defense systems and guard forces that no human weapon could penetrate. The aliens had designed them to withstand any attack that humans might be able to mount using primitive technology. But Jake realized that the hidden weapons might be powerful enough to break through these defenses if the attacks were coordinated properly. Captain Amy Rogers had been secretly maintaining aircraft in abandoned military bases across North America. She had spent decades learning to fly alien vehicles that had been damaged in crashes and left behind by careless Zephyrian pilots. Amy knew that air support would be essential for any attack on the communication towers because they were built on high platforms that could only be reached from above. The Resistance began planning Operation Breakout, which would target 12 major communication towers simultaneously across 6 continents. Each attack would need to succeed quickly, because once the aliens realized what was happening, they would reinforce all remaining towers and make future attacks impossible. The operation would also need to capture at least 1 tower intact, so the Resistance could access the genetic reversal technology. Jake volunteered to lead the attack on the Chicago Tower because he knew the underground tunnel system better than anyone else. Lisa would provide technical support and help operate the captured alien equipment once they gained access to the facility. Danny would coordinate the electronic warfare components of the attack, and Amy would provide air support using modified alien aircraft. As the planning progressed, Jake began to understand the true scale of what they were attempting. This would not just be a military operation, but a complete transformation of human society. If they succeeded in reversing the genetic modifications, humans would regain abilities they had not possessed for 2 centuries. People would become stronger, faster, and more intelligent than they had been since before the invasion. But success was far from guaranteed because the aliens had ruled Earth for so long that they had become overconfident and lazy in some ways. But they still possessed overwhelming technological advantages. The Resistance would have only one chance to strike before the element of surprise was lost forever. If Operation Breakout failed, there might never be another opportunity to free humanity from alien control. During the final planning meeting that took place over a secure communication link, Jake listened to Resistance leaders from around the world. Coordinate the most ambitious military operation in human history. General Patrick Stone would lead the European attacks while Commander Kyle Brooks coordinated North American operations. Similar leaders in Asia, Africa, South America, and Australia had their own teams ready to strike at the designated time. The attacks were scheduled to begin in 72 hours when the alien patrol schedules would be at their most predictable, and the Resistance teams would have the best chance of reaching their targets undetected. Jake spent those final days checking and rechecking his equipment while trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong. He knew that many of the people he had grown to care about might not survive the coming battle, but he also knew that doing nothing would mean slow death for all of humanity. Operation Breakout began at exactly midnight when Resistance teams around the world launched coordinated attacks on 12 major communication towers. Jake led his team through the tunnel system beneath Chicago, while similar groups moved toward their targets in New York, London, Berlin, Tokyo, Moscow, Sydney, and 6 other cities where the aliens maintained their primary command centers. Lieutenant Ben Taylor had joined Jake's team, along with Maya Johnson, who was one of the few humans who understood alien technology well enough to operate their complex systems. Ben was a former Marine who had spent years planning for this moment, while Maya had learned alien engineering by watching their technicians work in the research facilities where she had been assigned as a cleaning worker. The Chicago Tower rose 300 meters above the city center and was protected by energy shields that could stop any conventional weapon. But the plasma rifles from the hidden cache were not conventional weapons, and Jake hoped they would be powerful enough to penetrate the alien defenses. His team moved through the tunnels until they reached a position directly beneath the tower foundation. Amy Rogers provided air support using 3 modified alien aircraft that she had secretly prepared for this mission. The alien pilots had become careless over the years because they never expected humans to pose any real threat, and Amy had been able to steal and modify their vehicles without being detected. She attacked the tower's upper defenses while Jake's team struck from below. The plasma rifles worked better than anyone had dared to hope, cutting through the energy shields like they were made of paper instead of advanced alien technology. Ben led the assault team into the tower while Maya worked to disable the security systems that would normally have triggered massive retaliation from other alien facilities in the region. Similar attacks were taking place around the world, and Jake could hear reports coming through his communication device as other resistance teams fought their way into heavily defended alien positions. General Patrick Stone had successfully captured the Berlin Tower, but the London team was facing fierce resistance. Commander Kyle Brooks reported that the Detroit operation was ahead of schedule, while the Moscow team had encountered unexpected defenses. Inside the Chicago Tower, Jake found himself face-to-face with Zephyrian soldiers for the first time in his life. The aliens were tall and gray with large black eyes, and they moved with a fluid grace that made them difficult to target. But their weapons were designed to fight other aliens and were not very effective against humans who could move in ways that alien tactics did not anticipate. Ben's military training proved invaluable as he led the team through corridors filled with alien technology that hummed and glowed with strange energies. Maya worked frantically to understand the control systems, while Jake and Ben held off alien reinforcements that arrived to retake the facility. The plasma rifles gave humans a significant advantage, but the aliens had superior numbers and knew the tower layout better. Maya discovered that the genetic reversal technology was located in the tower's central core, where massive computers controlled communication networks across the entire North American continent. She began the complex process of activating the reversal signal, which would broadcast specific frequencies that could undo 2 centuries of genetic manipulation in any human who received the transmission. But the aliens had one more surprise waiting for the resistance fighters. Hidden defense systems activated throughout the tower, and mechanical guardians emerged from concealed chambers to attack the human intruders. These robots were faster and stronger than any alien soldier, and their weapons could cut through human armor like it was made of cloth instead of metal. Jake realized that the aliens had been preparing for the possibility of human rebellion and had created defenses specifically designed to stop attacks like Operation Breakout. The mechanical guardians were programmed to recognize human genetic signatures and eliminate any person who entered restricted areas of the tower. It seemed like the resistance had walked into a trap. But Maya's understanding of alien technology gave her an idea that none of the alien programmers had anticipated. She began reprogramming the mechanical guardians using commands that she had learned from studying their maintenance protocols. Instead of attacking humans, the robots began targeting the alien soldiers who were trying to retake the tower. The genetic reversal signal began broadcasting across North America, and Jake could feel immediate changes in his own body as centuries of genetic suppression were undone in a matter of minutes. His mind became clearer and his physical strength increased, while his reflexes became faster than they had ever been. Similar changes were happening to every human within range of the broadcast. Reports from other resistance teams indicated that the attacks were succeeding beyond all expectations. The aliens had become so confident in their control over humanity that they had not prepared adequate defenses against a coordinated global uprising. 8 of the 12 targeted towers had been captured, while 3 others had been severely damaged. Only the Sydney operation had failed completely when the resistance team encountered heavier defenses than anticipated. But Jake also learned something that filled him with dread about the future. Deep within the tower's computer systems, Maya discovered files that revealed the true reason why the Zephyrians had conquered Earth. They were not the dominant species in the galaxy, but were actually refugees fleeing from something much more dangerous that had destroyed their original home world. The aliens had turned Earth into a fortress and used humanity as a workforce to build weapons and defenses against their unknown enemy. The genetic modifications had been designed not just to make humans docile, but to prepare them to serve as soldiers in a war that the Zephyrians expected to fight on Earth when their pursuers finally found them. As the genetic reversal signal spread across the continent, millions of humans began experiencing the return of capabilities that their species had not possessed for 200 years. Intelligence levels increased dramatically, while physical strength and speed reached levels that exceeded even pre-invasion humans. But along with these improvements came the knowledge that Earth might soon become a battlefield in a galactic conflict that humanity knew nothing about. Jake realized that freeing humanity from alien control was only the beginning of a much larger struggle that would determine the fate of Earth and every person living on it. Within days of Operation Breakout, the genetic reversal signal had spread to every human on Earth, and the results were beyond anything the Resistance had imagined possible. Humans who had been weak and submissive for generations suddenly possessed intelligence and physical capabilities that exceeded even their ancestors from before the invasion. The alien genetic modifications had not just suppressed human potential, but had actually concentrated it so that when the restrictions were removed, people became stronger and smarter than ever before. Jake found himself leading not just a small, resistance cell but a global liberation movement as millions of newly enhanced humans rose up against their alien oppressors. The Zephyrians had built their control system around the assumption that humans would remain weak and divided, but now they faced a species that was rapidly becoming their technological and physical equal. Admiral Kate Stevens emerged as a leader in the liberation of orbital facilities that the aliens had been using to build their defensive fleet. Kate had been a naval officer before the invasion and had spent decades studying alien spacecraft from her position as a maintenance worker in the orbital shipyards. With her enhanced abilities, she could now understand alien technology well enough to not just operate their ships, but to improve upon their designs. Dr. Ryan Mitchell led the effort to restore human space capabilities by reverse engineering alien propulsion systems and adapting them for human use. Ryan had always been brilliant, but the genetic enhancements allowed him to comprehend complex physics concepts that had been beyond human understanding for centuries. He discovered that the aliens had been deliberately keeping humans ignorant of certain scientific principles that were necessary for advanced space travel. The first major space battle took place when human forces attempted to capture the main alien fleet depot in orbit around Earth. Jake led a boarding party using modified alien fighters while Ben coordinated ground support from captured surface installations. The battle was fierce because the Zephyrians finally understood that they were facing a real threat to their control over the planet. But human adaptability proved to be the decisive factor in the conflict. Where alien tactics were rigid and predictable, human fighters constantly changed their approach and improvised new strategies that confused and overwhelmed their opponents. Maya's ability to reprogram alien systems during combat allowed human forces to turn captured enemy ships against their former owners. The aliens made a desperate attempt to retake control by activating hidden weapon systems that they had built into Earth's infrastructure during the occupation. Massive energy weapons emerged from underground installations and began targeting human population centers in an effort to force the rebellion to surrender. But humans had become too widely spread and too well organized to be stopped by threats against civilians. Lisa led teams of enhanced human scientists in developing countermeasures against the alien weapons, while Danny coordinated cyber attacks that disabled many of the hidden installations before they could fire. The combination of human intelligence and determination proved more than a match for alien technology and superior firepower. As the liberation progressed, Jake made a disturbing discovery about the true nature of the alien presence on Earth. Deep within the captured orbital facilities, he found evidence that the Zephyrians were not just refugees, but were actually part of a galactic empire that had enslaved dozens of other species. Earth had been intended as a fortress world where the aliens could prepare for expansion to other star systems. But the Zephyrians had also been truthful about fleeing from a dangerous enemy. Jake learned that their former slaves had united under the leadership of a species called the Korathi, who had dedicated themselves to hunting down and destroying every Zephyrian installation in the galaxy. The Korathi fleet was already heading toward Earth and would arrive within months. This knowledge created a difficult choice for humanity: because the approaching Karathi might see Earth as just another Zephyrian colony that needed to be destroyed. Jake realized that humans would need to prove their independence from alien control and demonstrate that they were allies rather than enemies of other enslaved species. Admiral Kate Stevens successfully captured the Zephyrian flagship, which contained detailed information about other worlds under alien control and the location of the approaching Karathi fleet. The ship's computers also revealed that several other enslaved species had already broken free from Zephyrian rule and were fighting their own liberation wars across the galaxy. Jake made contact with these other resistance movements and discovered that humans were not alone in their struggle against oppression. Species from dozens of worlds had been working together to coordinate attacks against Zephyrian installations, and many were eager to welcome Earth into their alliance of free peoples. But time was running short because the Karathi fleet was approaching Earth faster than expected, and they had already begun sending scout ships to investigate the situation in the solar system. Jake knew that humanity would need to act quickly to establish its independence and prove that Earth was no longer under alien control. Dr. Ryan Mitchell completed work on the first human-designed spacecraft that incorporated the best features of alien technology while adding uniquely human innovations that made it superior to anything the Zephyrians had built. The ship was named Liberation, and it would serve as humanity's ambassador to the approaching Karathi fleet. The final battle for Earth began when a large Zephyrian task force arrived from their nearest colony in an attempt to retake the planet. Before the Karathi could arrive, Jake commanded the human defense fleet from the Bridge of Liberation, while Kate coordinated orbital defenses and Ben led ground forces in protecting the surface installations. The battle was the largest space combat in Earth's history, and it would determine whether humanity would remain enslaved or take its place as a free species among the stars. Enhanced human crews fought with skill and determination that surprised even themselves, while their ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible according to alien tactical doctrine. When the smoke cleared, the Zephyrian task force had been completely destroyed, and Earth was finally free from alien control for the first time in 2 centuries. But Jake knew that the real test was still coming when the Karathi fleet arrived, and humanity would need to prove that it deserved to survive as an independent species. The Karathi fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system 3 weeks after the final defeat of the Zephyrian forces, and Jake knew that the next few hours would determine the future of every human being alive. He stood on the Bridge of Liberation, surrounded by Lisa Ben Maya and the other leaders who had helped break the chains of alien oppression, but now faced an even greater challenge in proving that humanity deserved to exist as a free species. The Karathi ships were massive beyond anything humans had ever seen, with hulls that seemed to absorb light and weapons that could destroy entire planets with a single shot. Their technology was centuries ahead of even the Zephyrians, and Jake realized that if they decided humanity was still an enemy, there would be no possibility of resistance or escape. Admiral Kate Stevens opened communication channels using alien protocols that Ryan Mitchell had modified to demonstrate human technical capabilities. The response came in the form of a deep voice that spoke in perfect English, showing that the Karathi had been monitoring Earth communications and learning about human culture and language. The Karathi commander identified himself as Fleet Admiral Zakhtar and explained that his people had been fighting the Zephyrian Empire for over 1,000 years, since their own homeworld had been enslaved and destroyed. They had tracked the aliens to Earth expecting to find another conquered world that would need to be liberated, but instead discovered that the humans had already freed themselves. Jake spoke for humanity and explained how the Resistance had discovered hidden technology and used it to break free from genetic modification and alien control. He shared the story of Operation Breakout and the battles that had led to complete human independence, while emphasizing that Earth was no longer part of the Zephyrian Empire and posed no threat to other free species. But Admiral Zakhtar revealed that the situation was more complex than Jake had realized. The Zephyrians had used Earth as a manufacturing center for weapons and ships that were being used to attack other worlds and enslave additional species. Even though humans had not known about this, the Karathi could not simply ignore the role that Earth had played in supporting alien aggression across the galaxy. The solution came when Maya presented her analysis of the captured Zephyrian databases, which contained detailed information about every enslaved world and the location of hidden resistance movements that were still fighting for freedom. Jake proposed that instead of destroying Earth, the Karathi should accept humanity as an ally in the ongoing war against the remaining Zephyrian colonies. Dr. Nicole Harper had been studying alien biology and discovered that many enslaved species had been subjected to genetic modifications similar to what had been done to humans. The reversal technology that had freed humanity could potentially be used to help other species regain their natural capabilities and break free from alien control. Lisa proposed a plan where human ships would carry the genetic reversal technology to other enslaved worlds while Karathi forces provided military support for liberation operations. This would allow the resistance to free entire populations instead of just fighting endless battles against alien military forces. Admiral Zakhtar was impressed by human adaptability and the speed with which they had not only freed themselves, but developed new technologies that exceeded alien capabilities. After consulting with the Karathi High Command, he agreed to accept Earth as an independent ally rather than treating it as a conquered enemy territory. The first joint operation took place 6 months later when a combined human and Karathi fleet attacked a major Zephyrian colony that had been enslaving a species called the Villani for over 3 centuries. Jake commanded a squadron of human ships while Ben led ground forces in liberating the planet's surface installations. The Villani had been modified even more extensively than humans and required months of treatment before they could regain their original capabilities. But when the process was complete, they proved to be natural engineers who could improve upon both human and Karathi technology in ways that neither species had imagined possible. Similar liberation operations followed across the galaxy as the alliance grew to include dozens of formerly enslaved species who each contributed unique abilities and knowledge to the growing coalition. Humans became known as mediators and innovators who could find solutions to problems that had seemed impossible to other species. Danny Walsh established a galactic communication network that allowed all allied species to coordinate their activities and share information about Zephyrian movements. Amy Rogers trained pilots from multiple worlds in advanced combat techniques that combined the best tactics from each species. The war against the Zephyrian Empire lasted 3 more years, but the outcome was never really in doubt once the alliance had been formed. The aliens had built their power on the assumption that enslaved species would never be able to work together effectively, but humans had proven that cooperation was more powerful than any weapon. The final battle took place at the Zephyrian homeworld, where Jake led a massive fleet containing ships and crews from 40 different species. The aliens had prepared elaborate defenses, but they could not match the combined creativity and determination of so many formerly enslaved peoples working together toward a common goal. When the last Zephyrian stronghold fell, Jake stood with his allies on the bridge of a ship they had named Unbroken Chain, and watched as the symbols of alien oppression were finally destroyed. The galaxy was free for the first time in over a millennium, and every species could now develop according to its own nature without interference from conquerors. 1 year later, Jake found himself serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, where former enemies worked together to build a new civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Lisa worked as chief scientist for an organization that helped newly liberated species recover from the effects of genetic modification, while Ben commanded the peacekeeping forces that protected vulnerable worlds from potential new threats. Maya had become the galaxy's leading expert on adaptive technology and spent her time teaching other species how to modify alien devices for peaceful purposes. Ryan Mitchell led exploration missions to distant star systems where new worlds waited to be discovered by free peoples who would never again accept the chains of slavery. Jake often stood on the observation deck of Unbroken Chain and thought about his grandfather, who had died believing that humans would never be free, but had still told stories about the importance of hope and courage. The old man would have been proud to see his grandson leading not just the liberation of Earth, but the creation of a new galactic civilization, where no species would ever again be caged by those who thought themselves superior. Humanity had been tested by centuries of oppression, but had emerged stronger and wiser than ever before. The chains were broken and could never be forged again, because too many people now understood that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that together even the weakest could overcome the strongest when they refused to give up hope.